For decades, John Denver's music captured the spirit of America, while Emmylou Harris's voice defined an entire generation of country and folk. They only recorded one major duet together, but that single moment created a bond fans never forgot. Now, at 78, Emmylou Harris is finally breaking her silence, sharing what John Denver truly meant to her, the untold stories behind their friendship, and how his legacy continues to shape her life today. This isn't just about music. It's about truth, memory, and the power of two voices that changed the world. When you think about the golden age of American music in the 1970s and 1980s, two names inevitably rise to the surface: John Denver and Emmylou Harris. Both were more than just singers. They were storytellers, weaving tales of love, loss, and landscapes into songs that have stood the test of time. Their voices, though distinct, shared one quality that made them unforgettable: authenticity. And it was that very quality that would eventually draw them together in one of country and folk music's most memorable collaborations. To understand why their connection mattered so deeply, you first have to understand the world they came from. John Denver was America's troubadour, the clean-cut, bespectacled folk singer who became a household name with hits like Take Me Home, Country Roads, Rocky Mountain High, and Annie's Song. His music wasn't edgy, but it was honest. He sang about nature, about home, about simple joys that resonated with millions. By the mid-1970s, he was one of the biggest names in music, selling out stadiums, topping charts, and even hosting his own television specials. Emmylou Harris, meanwhile, took a very different path to fame. She began as a folk singer, performing in coffeehouses before fate introduced her to the legendary Graham Parsons. That partnership would change her life. With Parsons, Emmylou found her calling, a blend of country, folk, and rock that pushed boundaries and created what many now call country rock. After Parsons' untimely death, Emmylou carried his torch, building a career that balanced mainstream recognition with artistic integrity. Songs like Boulder to Birmingham and albums like Pieces of the Sky established her as one of the most soulful voices in country music. By the early 1980s, both John Denver and Emmylou Harris had carved out unique spaces in the American songbook. Denver represented the wholesome, almost spiritual connection to nature and home, while Emmylou embodied the raw emotion and storytelling power of traditional country. On paper, they came from different worlds. Denver was the face of folk pop, embraced by Middle America. Harris was the darling of critics and country purists, known for her willingness to experiment and collaborate. Yet beneath the surface, their musical philosophies were remarkably aligned. Both artists believed that music wasn't just entertainment, it was a lifeline. It was about truth, about expressing the human condition in a way that connected with ordinary people. Neither cared much for trends or gimmicks. They didn't need flashy production to make a point. A guitar, a melody, and a voice full of conviction were enough. This shared outlook set the stage for something special. When John Denver reached out to Emmylou Harris in the early 1980s to record a duet, it wasn't a marketing gimmick. It was a meeting of kindred spirits. The song would become Wild Montana Skies, a sweeping, heartfelt ballad about the rugged beauty of the American West. Released in 1983, the song felt like destiny. Denver's clear, soaring tenor and Emmylou's warm, haunting harmony blended together as if they were always meant to. But the story of their collaboration wasn't just about one song. It was about two artists who, at the height of their powers, recognized something in each other. Denver admired Emmylou's purity, her refusal to compromise her artistry. Emmylou admired Denver's ability to touch the masses without losing his soul. Together they represented two sides of the same coin: mainstream appeal and critical respect, folk pop charm and country grit. For fans, the pairing was electrifying. To hear Denver and Harris together was to hear two great traditions, folk and country, meld into one. And yet at the time, it didn't receive the commercial fanfare it might have deserved. Wild Montana Skies wasn't a chart-topping smash in the way Take Me Home, Country Roads had been. But it endured in a different way. For those who heard it, the duet became a hidden gem, a reminder of what music could be when egos were set aside and authenticity took center stage. Looking back, it's clear that both John Denver and Emmylou Harris shaped not only their genres but also the cultural fabric of America. Denver gave us anthems of belonging, songs that celebrated the beauty of the land and the simplicity of home. Harris gave us songs of heartbreak and resilience, performances that proved country music could be both traditional and innovative. And together, they gave us a moment in time that still resonates decades later. What makes their story so compelling today, as Emmylou Harris reflects at the age of 78, is that it wasn't just about the music, it was about values. Both artists lived through an era when the industry often demanded conformity, glamour, trends, commercial polish. Yet they both held fast to their sense of truth. John Denver refused to abandon his clean-cut image, even when critics called him corny. Emmylou Harris refused to chase radio hits even when Nashville executives pressured her. They stayed true, and in doing so, they built legacies that continue to inspire younger generations. In many ways, their duet was symbolic. Wild Montana Skies wasn't just a song about Montana, it was about the vastness of the human spirit, the search for freedom, and the power of home. And when Denver and Harris sang it together, it became more than a duet. It became a conversation between two artists whose lives had been shaped by music, sacrifice, and an unshakable belief in authenticity. That's why, when Emmylou Harris speaks about John Denver today, her words carry so much weight. She isn't just recalling a duet partner. She's recalling a peer, a friend, and a fellow traveler on the road of music. Their voices defined an era, and their story continues to echo across the decades. And in the next chapter, we'll explore how that collaboration, one song, one moment in time, became a lasting legacy. The duet that stole hearts and left fans forever wishing they'd sung together more. When John Denver and Emmylou Harris stepped into the studio in 1983 to record Wild Montana Skies, neither of them could have predicted how deeply the song would resonate with listeners. For many fans, it wasn't just a duet. It was a meeting of two musical worlds that seemed destined to collide. Denver, the Colorado cowboy whose voice had already become a soundtrack for America's heartland, and Harris, the silver-haired songbird whose harmonies could pierce the soul, created something that still feels timeless. At first glance, Wild Montana Skies was everything you'd expect from a John Denver song. It celebrated wide-open spaces, the rugged independence of the American West, and the deep sense of belonging that comes from knowing a place is truly home. But when Emmylou's voice enters the track, the song transforms. Suddenly, it isn't just Denver's ode to Montana. It becomes a conversation, a shared story of longing and belonging, as if two travelers had stumbled upon each other on a dusty trail and realized they'd been walking the same path all along. The brilliance of the duet lies not only in the lyrics but in the emotional interplay between their voices. Denver's tenor is clear, optimistic, almost soaring, while Emmylou's harmony carries a certain ache, a haunting quality that grounds the song in reality. Together, they paint a picture of Montana that isn't just about geography. It's about freedom, identity, and the pull of the land on the human heart. What made the song so powerful was its authenticity. Neither Denver nor Harris approached the duet as a publicity stunt. They weren't trying to force a hit. Instead, both artists were drawn to the material because it reflected who they were. Denver had always been inspired by the American West, by its vast landscapes and quiet solitude. Harris, who had built her career on emotionally rich storytelling, was equally at home in songs that spoke to longing and memory. The result was a track that didn't just sound good, it felt true. For fans, Wild Montana Skies quickly became something of a hidden treasure. Unlike Take Me Home, Country Roads, or Boulder to Birmingham, it wasn't a song that dominated the charts or the radio. But those who discovered it held it close, almost like a secret passed down through generations of listeners. In many ways, that was fitting. The song itself was about discovery, about finding home in unexpected places. It made sense that it would resonate most deeply with those who stumbled upon it and recognized a piece of themselves in its melody. Emmylou Harris has often spoken about the importance of harmony in music, the idea that two voices together can create something greater than the sum of their parts. Nowhere is that more evident than in this duet. When she sings alongside Denver, her harmonies don't just complement his lead, they elevate it. The song becomes layered, textured, alive. It's a reminder of what makes collaboration so powerful. The ability to merge perspectives, to blend differences into something unified and beautiful. Critics at the time may not have fully appreciated the significance of the duet, but fans certainly did. To this day, live performances of Wild Montana Skies continue to surface online, with thousands of comments from listeners describing how the song touched their lives. For some, it's a nostalgic reminder of youth, road trips, and simpler times. For others, it's a spiritual anthem, a song that speaks to the human need for connection, to the land, to each other, to something larger than ourselves. What's also striking is how the duet reflected the personal journeys of both artists. John Denver, by the early 1980s, was grappling with the pressures of fame. While he was still beloved by millions, critics often dismissed him as too wholesome, too safe, even corny. But in songs like Wild Montana Skies, he proved that sincerity was his greatest strength. Emmylou Harris, meanwhile, was solidifying her reputation as one of country's most respected voices. She had already weathered tragedy with the loss of Graham Parsons and had built a career on resilience and authenticity. Together, the duet symbolized survival, endurance, and a refusal to compromise artistry for commercial gain. Over the years, Wild Montana Skies has come to represent more than just a collaboration between two legends. It stands as a metaphor for unity. In an industry often divided by genre, folk versus country, mainstream versus critical acclaim, Denver and Harris showed that music has no borders. A good song is a good song, and when sung with honesty, it has the power to transcend categories and labels. For Emmylou, now looking back at the age of 78, the duet represents not just a highlight of her career, but a reminder of John Denver's enduring spirit. She has often praised his generosity, his optimism, and his ability to connect with audiences without ever losing sight of his values. For Denver's fans, the duet is bittersweet. His untimely death in 1997 left a void that can never truly be filled. Yet through collaborations like Wild Montana Skies, his voice continues to live on, not just in recordings, but in the memories of those who shared those moments with him. Perhaps that's why the song endures so powerfully today. It isn't just about Montana. It's about the universal search for home, for belonging, for a place where the skies stretch wide and the soul feels free. And in that sense, it speaks to all of us. Whether we grew up on the plains, in the mountains, or in the heart of the city, we all know what it means to yearn for home. In the end, Wild Montana Skies wasn't just a duet. It was a gift, a fleeting moment of harmony between two of the greatest voices of their generation. A reminder that sometimes, when the right people come together, they can create something that outlives them both. And in the next chapter, we'll step away from the music and look at the friendship behind the duet, a bond built on respect, admiration, and a shared commitment to living authentically, no matter the cost. When the lights dimmed and the cameras stopped rolling, John Denver and Emmylou Harris weren't just colleagues, they were friends. Behind the curtain, their connection went far deeper than a single duet. Both had carved out identities in the music world that were honest, unpolished, and deeply human, and this mutual respect created a foundation for a lasting bond. While their careers often took them in different directions, the moments they did share revealed a friendship that spoke volumes about who they were as people, not just as performers. John Denver was, at his core, an optimist. His music radiated warmth, and he carried that same generosity into his relationships. Emmylou Harris, known for her thoughtful, sometimes melancholic artistry, balanced that optimism with a quiet strength. Together, their personalities complemented each other in ways that echoed their voices in wild Montana skies. Denver's wide-eyed enthusiasm paired with Emmylou's reflective calm created a friendship marked by authenticity rather than pretense. It's important to remember that both artists carried scars, personal and professional, that shaped how they related to others. By the early 1980s, Denver's career, while still strong, was beginning to shift. He had been one of the biggest stars of the 1970s, selling out stadiums and topping charts around the world. But fame had taken a toll. His personal life was often tabloid fodder, with failed marriages and battles over his image, clouding the purity of his artistry. For someone who wrote songs about honesty and connection, the spotlight could feel like a cage. Emmylou, meanwhile, had endured her own hardships. Her early career was defined by her partnership with Graham Parsons, a man whose influence on her music was immeasurable. His sudden death in 1973 left her reeling, forcing her to rebuild her career on her own terms. Out of that pain came strength, and she forged ahead with a resilience that won her respect across genres. By the time she collaborated with Denver, Emmylou had already learned that survival in the music business required more than talent. It demanded heart, humility, and the ability to keep going, no matter what. Their conversations, according to those who knew them, often reflected these shared experiences. Both knew what it meant to be misunderstood by critics. Denver was sometimes mocked for being too wholesome, while Harris was pigeonholed as a country singer despite her wide-ranging artistry. Both refused to let those labels define them. When they talked, it wasn't about chasing fame or reinventing themselves for trends. It was about staying true to the music and to the people who believed in them. There are stories from friends and fellow musicians about how supportive they were of each other. Denver admired Emmylou's ability to transform grief into art, often citing her as an example of courage. Emmylou, in turn, respected Denver's steadfast belief in the goodness of people, even when the world around him seemed intent on proving otherwise. This admiration wasn't born from publicity stunts or industry deals. It was genuine, rooted in lived experience. Their friendship also reflected a shared understanding of what it meant to live life on the road. Both spent years traveling from city to city, pouring themselves into performances night after night. That lifestyle, glamorous on the surface, could be isolating. But when they crossed paths, whether on stage, in a studio, or backstage after a concert, there was a sense of relief in being with someone who truly understood. For a few moments, they could set aside the demands of celebrity and simply be John and Emmylou, two musicians, two friends, two souls navigating the highs and lows of life in the public eye. One of the untold stories behind their bond is how they both found comfort in nature. Denver, of course, was known for his love of the outdoors. His songs about the Rockies, the mountains, and the open sky reflected not just a theme, but a way of life. Emmylou, though quieter about it, shared a similar appreciation for stillness and space. For both, nature offered clarity, a reminder that beyond the flashing lights of fame, there was a bigger world that put everything into perspective. In that sense, Wild Montana Skies wasn't just a song they recorded together. It was an extension of values they both cherished. But perhaps the most touching part of their friendship is the way it endured through absence. They didn't see each other every day. Their careers pulled them in different directions, and they weren't constant fixtures in each other's lives. Yet when they did reunite, whether in person or in song, the connection was immediate. It was the kind of friendship that didn't need daily maintenance. It existed on a deeper level, built on respect and admiration that didn't fade with time or distance. When John Denver tragically died in 1997, Emmylou, like many of his friends and collaborators, was left to grapple with the sudden loss. She didn't make a spectacle of her grief. That wasn't her style. But those close to her say his passing weighed heavily on her. For Emmylou, Denver wasn't just a colleague. He was a kindred spirit, a reminder of what music could be when it came from the heart. His absence left a silence, one that could never truly be filled. As she reflects today, at 78, Emmylou carries with her the lessons of that friendship. Denver reminded her, and reminds all of us, that sincerity is not a weakness, but a strength. That optimism, even in the face of criticism, can be a form of resilience. And that music, when shared between friends, can transcend time, space, and even death. In the next chapter, we'll turn to Emmylou's own reflections, what she says now about John Denver's legacy, and how their brief but powerful collaboration continues to shape the way fans remember both of them. At 78, Emmylou Harris has lived a life filled with triumphs, heartbreaks, and unforgettable music. Her voice, still strong and haunting, carries the weight of decades spent telling stories that matter. When she finally speaks about John Denver, her collaborator, her friend, and one of the defining voices of American music, there's a sense of reverence in her words. Time has softened the edges of grief, but it has also deepened her understanding of what their connection truly meant. For Emmylou, John Denver was more than just a fellow artist. He was a reminder of why she had chosen this path in the first place. In interviews and quiet reflections, she's spoken about the honesty that ran through everything he did. While critics often dismissed Denver as overly sentimental, Emmylou insists that it was precisely his sincerity that gave his music its staying power. John sang what he believed, she has said, and that's why people still listen to him. He never tried to be anyone other than himself.